Hey, mom and dad, we're talking eating disorders today, and the question is, does TikTok or other social media platforms promote eating disorders? Well, the quick answer is definitely no. They don't, and their guidelines are definitely there saying, hey, we are not pro anorexia. I can't even believe that there is such a term. But the truth is that young people, as they do, find ways around this. Content is still being put onto these social media sites like TikTok, and the reality is that our kids can access this stuff. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, and I didn't until like 20 minutes ago, okay, so admittedly I have not done a ton of research on this. There is a blog post that was just released on Bark that I'm reading. I encourage you guys to go get that and take a look at it if this is interesting for you, or you feel like maybe one of your kids or your teens is in danger of this. And I want to be super sensitive as we talk about this topic, but do go check that out. What shocked me is, as I'm reading on this, they're talking about this idea. There's this phrase, pro-ana. I'm not sure if you've heard of this. And it really means pro-anorexia. It's short for that, pro-anorexia. Ed check, eating disorder check, and ed challenge, eating disorder challenge. And this is not talking about like, hey, let's take a challenge so we can get off of this eating disorder. These are pro disorder. It's talking about, there's a phrase I've never heard before, videos that are in support of disordered eating. So again, I apologize, I don't know much about this. I'm just trying to get this to you as soon as possible. But there are searches on TikTok for this, for eating disorder. A lot of the times kids will just misspell it in their hashtags or in their searches so that they can get around TikTok algorithms. But the point is that it's out there, and it's content that is promoting disordered eating. Sometimes there's songs that they're using and dancing to that have kind of lines in there about purging or etc. But it's important that we recognize first and foremost that social media, when it comes to our kids and our teens on social, one thing that we need to recognize and can help us better understand the challenges is to recognize that our children are in a place where they're trying to develop who they are and an understanding of who they are, their self-care, their self-love for themselves, the way that they see themselves and view themselves, their identity. And so, when you and I were growing up, we were already struggling with this just in quote-unquote normal life. You know what I'm saying? I just mean friends at school, But then we could come home, and be able to do homework or reconnect with family or our parents and kind of get away from the noise of that. And the social pressures or the Hollywood pressures or the hyper-sexualized media pressures. But today, as you know, our children not only have that at school, but then they come home and then they have it in their pocket 24/7, and it's pinging them all the time with new stuff, and they're comparing themselves, and now not just against Hollywood stars, but even people that they know at school. And the pressure and the dynamics of this like second world that they have to now live in is very, very strong. And I think you and I, we don't really get that. I know I don't fully understand it, but we have to be sensitive and understand that some of these things that you may not have dealt with, our kids are, when it comes to their image, their body image, the way that they look, and therefore how they feel about themselves. And I really want to say this, all of these things, I don't want to just talk about eating disorders or anorexia or these kinds of things up on here. We have to talk about that. But really, I want you to see the underlying issue when it comes to social media really has to do with their self-identity. So here's what I'm trying to suggest that we do, mom and dad. Yes, there are things that we need to do in the home when it comes to speaking positively about our bodies, not having scales around all the time and weighing ourselves, or definitely not speaking about the way our kids look in a negative way. I mean, there's a ton of things that we can do, and I think we should talk about that too. But today I just want to make this one strong point for you to consider. When you look at your child's maturity in the way that they're dealing socially with friends, their self-image, I want you to base your freedoms, the freedoms that you give your child when it comes to social media accounts, more so on the basis of how anchored they are in their identity. How anchored are they in who they are and knowing who they are? Shucks, in our 40s we're still dealing with that to some degree, right? But what I'm saying is that obviously the roller coaster ride of transformation and change that teens are going through makes this a very, very difficult time. And so I strongly recommend that you look at that and you make your decisions on if your children should be accessing social media platforms or how limited you should have them accessing it. Really more based on that. Definitely it can be based on their age, because age correlates with maturity, but really it has to do with, I think, where they are in their emotional and mental health, when it comes to their own identity and loving who they are. Because that's going to be the greatest defense against comparing themselves on these shots on Instagram, as well as being in a place where they would have to look out for these videos or learn how to purge or hide it from mom and dad, etc. So I just want to encourage you today. As you guys know, we do something that we call Start at 16, which is we're having conversations about all these things, and then when we get to 16, we actually open the door to the next conversation, which is, can you have social media accounts? We don't allow our kids to have them until 16. 16 still is quite early, I think, but at least there's a couple years that they have in the home with mom and I, where we can help them walk through these things and monitor these things, and even then we slowly release these things, as you know, with lots of monitoring. So just want you to consider that. I know some of you the kids already have that, but really if you think it's bad enough and you need to then take that away from them for a season, that may be in order. Or you have to really get involved or really start monitoring, or a combination of those. So just something that I want you to think about today. If you haven't seen my free webinar at familytechgameplan.com, I want you to go check it out. There's a lot of things that we talk about in this arena, including social media, as well as practical things that you can do starting today to help keep your kids safe online. All right, mom and dad, these are radical days that we're living in. I had never even heard of pro-Ana before in my life, or this idea that anyone would be pro-anorexia or eating disorder. It just blows my mind what we're having to deal with, but that's why we're in this together. That's why I hope you're following me on this account, my YouTube channel. And listen, if you need to share this with other parents who you think need to be aware of these kinds of things, please do. We're in it together. I know you can do it, mom and dad. We'll talk to you soon.